Our home flooded during Hurricane Helene. I reached out for support. My friend ghosted me for 4 months. OMG, how could she? For context, my family and I reside directly on the Swannanoa River in Asheville, North Carolina. Several days after the storm, when we finally regained cell service, I sent my friend, a person who lives an hour away, a series of photos depicting our inundated home and extensively damaged property, along with an update regarding our situation. I also shared a link to a GoFundMe campaign that my employer had initiated on our behalf, mentioning that if she felt inclined to share it, it would assist us with the forthcoming expenses. However, she chose not to respond, and I did not hear from her again for the next 4 months as my family and I faced tremendous challenges in rebuilding our lives. She randomly called me a few days ago, and I picked up. We exchanged some pleasantries about life, but she displayed little sympathy or interest in our experiences following the natural disaster. The next day, I texted her, leading to the following conversation. Am I in the wrong? I appreciate anyone who takes the time to read this and share their perspective. Me, it was nice to catch up yesterday. To be honest, since the flood, which was likely the most traumatic experience I have ever endured, I have felt somewhat unsettled, especially after sending you details and numerous photos of our circumstances, only to receive no response or further communication until 4 months later. Was it simply due to your busyness? I am genuinely curious. I have been feeling a bit hurt about this, so I wanted to be open about my feelings. After returning from Key West and witnessing the devastation, we believed it was essential to assist those in urgent need individuals without family support, shelter, or food. For months, we concentrated on helping in any way we could, organizing accommodation in our campground for those affected, and providing meals and essential items for people who had lost everything. Many individuals reached out for power and water for their campers, having exhausted their funds just to have a roof over their heads. Some had lost loved ones, along with their homes, clothing, and vehicles. What I'm struggling with is that, while I understand your situation was challenging, and I truly regret what happened to you, you had a secure home, food, and family backing to help you get back on your feet. There appeared to be a lack of awareness regarding the extent of suffering endured by others, who had no resources to aid in their recovery. I recognize that you and your family appreciate the assistance you've received, and I am relieved that you are getting back on track and nearly returning to your cabin. Nevertheless, I wanted to convey how I felt. The emphasis seemed misplaced, especially since you had such support in comparison to the many individuals who lost everything and faced significant struggles without help. Again, I understand this was a difficult period for you, and I do not judge how you managed these challenges. We simply witnessed countless individuals genuinely fighting for survival, which dictated my priorities during that time. I wanted to ensure you understood my perspective in all of this. I am perplexed about how you could have ever assumed that I believed we were in the worst position. The devastation, loss of life, and trauma were incredibly close to us. We have never at any point acted as though this situation was solely about us once the initial shock subsided. Those are harsh judgments made without even having a conversation with me or my family. Did you actually visit Asheville to see the situation for yourself? If so, that was kind of you to stop by. You never mentioned how you were aiding others, but it's commendable and vital that you did that. I would have had no problem with you choosing to focus on that instead of coming to assist us. The GoFundMe that was established on our behalf originated from people outside of our area. I did not initiate one for myself and would never consider doing so. Just because you wished to concentrate on helping individuals who lacked food and shelter does not excuse you from taking just a moment over the past 4 months to check in on me. I would never have treated you that way if the situations were reversed. There are individuals I know who are in therapy over this ordeal, despite having faced no losses themselves, other than being without utilities for a few weeks and only witnessing the devastation around them. It is neither your role nor mine to judge how others cope with trauma or to determine what is or is not traumatic for them. I apologize if my sharing of the GoFundMe caused you offense to the extent that it hindered you from reaching out to me again. In your view, perhaps we were just too fortunate to warrant concern, and it seemed you felt we were greedy for having a GoFundMe established for us that barely addressed the hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages and losses endured by Ben, my family, and me. I have stated countless times how incredibly fortunate we have been throughout all this. However, you would not know that since you chose to judge me solely based on my sharing of that GoFundMe link, which was created to provide us with a small amount of help, and you decided that was sufficient reason to cease checking on me. I genuinely apologize if my words upset you. That was never my goal. I realize the devastation was challenging for you. I am not casting judgment on anyone regarding how they navigated these tough times. I am merely expressing that your concerns during our last conversation seemed somewhat misplaced. You were focused on Ronan not having daycare and the various expenses associated with your car and home, but the car wasn't even impacted by the flood. It appeared that your priorities were somewhat skewed. I'm not judging your handling of the situation or your decision to continue sharing the GoFundMe. I just became aware of how limited resources were, which is where I disagreed. I also recognize that I should have reached out to you more personally during this period. My mind was all over the place, but you could have called too. I appreciate you sharing your feelings with me, and I am sincerely sorry if anything I said made you feel judged or unsupported. I'm simply trying to express my feelings during this time. Thank you for the apology. When I mentioned needing to cover house and car expenses, it was just 1 week after the entire event unfolded. I was incredibly shaken by the circumstances around me and felt like that was one area I had some semblance of control over. Therefore, it was a miscommunication on my part, and honestly, a misunderstanding on yours to interpret it as me believing our house and car damage was a priority relative to the tragic losses occurring just down the road. There are numerous layers of distress stemming from this ordeal that aren't often discussed. For instance, my father suffered a stroke likely induced by stress shortly before this incident, and he had moments afterward where he feared it might recur. We have been genuinely concerned about him. I lost a job opportunity I was very enthusiastic about because I was unable to begin immediately due to weeks without power or internet access, resulting in them offering the position to someone else. My mother lost her entire business, which she tirelessly built over 8 years. There wasn't even a trace left in her warehouse. The fact that we cannot even leave home without driving through reminders of the devastation for 5 continuous minutes weighs heavily on us. We have painstakingly spent months cleaning dust and thick mud from every item we own. It has simply been overwhelming. Ultimately, I hope we can all remember to give individuals, especially friends, the benefit of the doubt. After knowing each other for over half our lives, I would hope we wouldn't feel the need to doubt each other's character or priorities. Additionally, I can assure you that if you had lived through the disaster and witnessed your home flood with feet of water and mud, having to relocate under your parents' roof with only a few essentials packed in trash bags as your home threatened to float away with all of your belongings, you would be focused on how to help your family recover and get back on their feet. You might still feel fortunate compared to others, just as we did. However, we all possess our own versions of luck. Yours manifests in the fact that your family owns a campground an hour away, which you were able to utilize to provide shelter and assist others, giving you a sense of heroism while seemingly granting you license to look down on those who lived through the chaos and were striving to rebuild their lives amid extreme disorder, while I did so while being pregnant. What would you have done if that campground had not been a viable option? Would you have opened your home or yard to those displaced to camp out? As someone who was physically present during this crisis, I can attest that individuals' immediate needs were being addressed effectively. There were ample supplies and food distributed throughout the town, so much so that some people were unable to collect it all, with supplies being left at street corners. Essential resources were airdropped to residents who were trapped in their neighborhoods, which was our situation, and we received substantial aid shortly after the disaster occurred. Therefore, it was not the case that anyone was starving if they didn't wish to be. People looked after themselves and their immediate neighbors, as that was all we could do given the limited cell service and travel restrictions we faced during that time. We were confined to our neighborhood for an entire week. Despite all we dealt with, Ben and I participated in daily community meetings where we shared resources and support, and we consistently offered to let anyone who wished to come shower or access well water, which we were the only ones able to do. We all contributed in the best way we could. It pains me to think you perceived me as oblivious to others' suffering and self-absorbed throughout this turmoil, based solely on one offhand remark I made shortly after these events unfolded. I want you to know, I cried all the way home from Hendersonville after reading your message yesterday and have been upset ever since. I still love you and value our friendship, and I always will. However, if you continue to view me as someone with misguided priorities while you maintain a sense of moral superiority, determining who deserves support and who does not, then perhaps we should reconsider our friendship, and I would feel the same. And if you believe I'm being overly dramatic, keep in mind that this entire dialogue began with my simple inquiry. Why did you never respond to me? Why didn't you take a moment to check on me in 4 months? I did not inquire about why you didn't share my GoFundMe. I did not ask why you didn't donate. I did not question why you didn't assist me. I genuinely did not care about that. That was not at all the crux of this matter. The response I received, however, seemed rooted in your belief that you were preoccupied with more significant matters and expressing the view that I had misplaced priorities. This situation was never intended to be about comparison or judgment, but somehow it evolved into that without my awareness. That hurts. Story 2. I refused to sell my car to a rude guy. He cyberstalked me and threatened my child, not knowing my boss was a police lieutenant. TLDR at the end. I apologize in advance for the length and any spelling errors. It is an intriguing story nonetheless. So, around 8 years ago, I was selling a pre-owned vehicle. The engine light was illuminated, the air conditioning required recharging, and the fuel pump was malfunctioning. I decided to utilize my local, reliable sales platform. I posted an advertisement with several images and included the message, "I work unconventional hours, so I may not be able to take a phone call. Please contact me via text only. Cheers to working swing and midnight shifts, right?" It was actually due to my college classes, but it felt the same to me. A few days later, I receive a fairly typical message. "Hi, I'm Matt. Is your car still available?" Matt is not his actual name, but you get the gist. I replied that the car was still for sale. We exchanged some standard texts regarding the price, the reason for the engine light being on, the source of my repair quote. I had included an approximate price based on my trusted mechanic's input, and other details. The following day, I received a text from him asking, "Are you going to remove all your belongings from the car before selling it to me, or is that my responsibility?" Unjustified hostility. Seriously, what the heck? He was not the only interested buyer, so I responded, "I am not selling the car to you, so there is no need to worry about it." I never agreed to sell it to him. He never asked if he was the only one interested, and others were already arranging test drives. I did not require his less than full price, half-hearted interest. Furthermore, what he was complaining about consisted of 3 textbooks and a bag holding some clothing. 4 items. This individual refused to accept my refusal and began calling and sending messages about how the paint on my car was peeling, which was true. But I had clearly indicated this in the pictures and description, and questioned how I dared to ask for so much $1,000 for what he claimed was a worthless vehicle. I responded for a while, informing him that he was not going to obtain the car, that I had other interested buyers, and he should not be concerned. Then things took a personal turn. This site allowed users to link their posts to Facebook, which I had done. I did not have my privacy settings restricted since it was still early in Facebook's dominance, and I actually placed some trust in them back then. How naive I was. I did not foresee that he would be able to discover my information through the post, including my name, location, images of my child, and even my mother-in-law's obituary. I was caught off guard. He began texting me about how I should feel ashamed for rejecting him, a muscular man, while I am a rather round woman. He attached a photo in one message, and he was not the muscular, fit individual he claimed to be. He resembled a thin pole with 2 abdominal muscles, so, seriously. He questioned whether I even understood anything about cars or if I had posted while on my period, implying I was clueless. He sent a message stating that I should feel fortunate to be married already. Otherwise, he would come to my home and show me how a real man deals with a little girl. He got close, but without my address, he would never find my apartment due to how it appears on GPS, thankfully. A quick side note: at the time, I was in college and needed a more flexible schedule, so I worked as a school crossing guard. Every couple of weeks, we would go in to sign our time cards for payment. This crossing guard position was through my local police department. Not all crossing guard jobs are the same, but this one was. During one of these visits to the office, I was using my phone while waiting for my turn, my name being towards the bottom of the alphabet. I had not yet blocked the man since it had only been a limited time since this began, and I was hoping it would fade away on its own. I chose not to check my phone in class, turning it off to avoid being distracted all day, which often resulted in receiving several hours' worth of texts at once. What I encountered on my phone pushed me over the edge. He started sending messages about pictures I had posted on Facebook of my then 7 or 8-year-old son. He had completely crossed the line. The mildest version of his messages included remarks such as, "Your child is just as unattractive as you. I hope you don't expect him to move out and find a wife anytime soon." He also claimed that a smudge of dirt on my son's face from a zoo trip looked like I had physically harmed him. I didn't sell him a car, and he was directing his anger at me by threatening to assault me and accusing me of abusing my child. Oh, absolutely not. Apparently, I was quite loud when I expressed my outrage because my boss came over shortly after and asked what was wrong. An excellent person. 10/10. I would definitely work for her again. I explained that I was receiving abusive texts from a stranger who attempted to purchase my vehicle. I mentioned that I intended to erase and block him, but she insisted. "No, wait, don't do that. Let me see your phone." I am so glad I held off on deleting anything, as the next part truly makes my heart soar. I offered my phone, and she read the disgusting messages he had sent me. She instructed me to wait while she cleared the other crossing guards from the lobby, which I did. She then asked me to follow her behind the security doors at the police department station, still possessing my phone. I was unsure of what was happening, but I trusted her, so I followed her to her office, where she worked on her computer while occasionally consulting my phone. She inquired if all I had was the phone number or if I had also gotten his name. I informed her I only had a first name and scrolled to the text where he introduced himself. After what felt like an uncomfortable amount of time, she returned my phone. It's worth mentioning that my boss wasn't merely administrative. I was not aware at the time, but she was a full-fledged lieutenant in the local police department. She had worked her way up from a patrol position, eventually focusing on investigating complaints regarding abuse of children, the elderly, and individuals with disabilities before taking her current desk job. It goes without saying that she did not take threats against children lightly. Since I had not blocked the number, I still had the messages containing the man's name, and she used this information to cross-reference him with the phone number. In short, she was well aware of who he was. She assured me not to worry, but advised me not to delete or respond to his texts. She would handle the situation. If things escalated further, she instructed me to contact her or call 911 as necessary right away. Relaxed and pleased that she had the matter under control, I left and proceeded to class. When I returned to the office 2 weeks later to sign my next time card, I found multiple unread texts from the individual. I had filtered them out to avoid seeing the notifications, so I hadn't read them. I had sold the car at the full asking price and had almost completely forgotten about the situation. My boss asked me to wait once more because she had another document requiring my signature, and I returned to her office again. She briefly explained that she needed me to sign a complaint form regarding the issue from 2 weeks ago. I recalled everything vividly once again. She must have noticed my expression because she reassured me not to worry, stating she could explain more after I signed the document. So, I did. Dear Reddit, this was the best outcome anyone could have hoped for. The phone number was associated with many individuals, as the provider was notorious for offering cheap cell service to those in need of a means of communication for various purposes. However, with the name Matt again, not his real name, she managed to identify who was harassing me. She then obtained a driver's license, which led to an address, which subsequently resulted in a police report regarding potential domestic violence. Further investigation revealed that this man had fathered 5 children with 4 different women, and he was behind on child support payments to all of them. He had not made payments for over 10 years, amounting to approximately $30,000 to $50,000, if my memory serves me correctly. Yet, just 2 weeks prior, he had requested a title transfer for a new, quite luxurious car. I do not recall the specific model, but imagine a high-end car exhibition with exorbitant insurance costs. Being so far in arrears allowed my boss to place a seizure order on the vehicle, enabling its sale to cover the delinquent child support payments. One of the mothers of his children resided in a state where evading child support payments could lead to an arrest warrant being issued. When she contacted the appropriate authorities in that state to see if they wanted her to execute the arrest warrant, they responded, "Yes," with great urgency. I always found that phrase amusing, which is why I remember it so vividly. After one conversation, my boss determined that he had been using his brother's social security number on his employment forms to evade child support garnishments. This was obviously illegal, so she alerted the man's human resources department to rectify the issue. They informed her that he would be terminated for fraudulently submitting false documents. She then told me that approximately 4 days earlier, she executed the warrant for the man's arrest for felony child abandonment, and the authorities from the state where he was to be held were already on their way to pick him up. This charge carried an 8 to 12-year sentence, and he still owed back child support. I could have managed the rude comment. I could have tolerated his refusal to accept rejection, even dealt with the cyberstalking, to some extent. However, when your twisted mentality allows you to involve my child, you have definitely crossed the line. If you had just accepted no, you wouldn't be in jail right now. TLDR, a man attempting to purchase my vehicle made a disrespectful comment, causing me to refuse the sale. He could not graciously accept rejection, leading to cyberstalking and threats against my young child. He did not realize that my boss is a lieutenant in the local police department, which resulted in his expensive car being repossessed due to approximately $50,000 in back child support. He now has a felony record and is currently incarcerated. Edit. Wow, so many awards. Thank you all so much. My boss was truly the best. I was emotional when I left that job. She retired a few years ago, and I sent her a large cake to celebrate. She remembered me and called to express her gratitude. She was amazing and never gave me a reason to doubt her support. Edit. 2 platinum and gold. This is my first time receiving either. I am so grateful, thank you. Story 3. I confronted Grandpa about his betrayal during family drama. His silence said it all. Can I trust him again? OMG. Advice sought. I am sharing this because I feel lost for words. I previously mentioned spending Christmas with my grandfather, and since then, several other events have unfolded. I spoke to my therapist about our relationship, and it became evident that she struggled to understand why I tolerate his behavior, even though he is my grandfather. After reflecting on it for some time, there was an additional issue that, while not directly related to me, has prompted some concerning thoughts regarding my relationship with him. He has deceived me regarding several matters as well. There are certain details I cannot disclose due to legal proceedings, but I will share that my grandfather and I had a conversation over the weekend without directly addressing the core issues. My cousin is more like a younger sister to me, and I fulfill an older sister role for her. She resides in the same town as my grandfather, while I live far away on the other side of the country. Her father also lives quite a distance away, and my uncle and I are closer in proximity to one another than any of us are to my grandfather and my cousin. She is currently entangled in a legal struggle with an individual I cannot name at this moment, but perhaps I will share more when everything is resolved and my thoughts are clearer. This individual is meant to be my father. Until last week, my grandfather had been playing both sides of the situation. He communicated one thing to me, my cousin, and my uncle, and something entirely different to this man. As a result, he was called into court, where he sided with the individual, suggesting that they should consult him for the correct information. I am feeling immense self-blame for enabling this situation. After my grandmother passed away, my grandfather required medical support, and I advocated for the individual because he was the closest adult relative. Everyone, including my uncle, agreed with me. However, I sensed something like this might occur and did not voice my concerns strongly enough at the time. He is not the power of attorney, but is listed as the first contact for medical decisions due to their shared residence. Returning to my narrative after his testimony, he texted my cousin, asking if she could come and clean up an accident he had. This was utterly disrespectful. He has communicated something completely different to us. In private, he has sided with the younger generation, not with the older individual. For a long time, I felt unable to discuss this with him unless he initiated the conversation, which he eventually did. We were on the phone, as we connect at least once a day. My grandfather continued to complain about my uncle, my cousin, and the individual for drawing him into their issues. At that point, I decided to ask him, "Grandpa, may I speak candidly with you?" He replied, "Yes," I responded, "I am very disappointed in you." To which he said, "You shouldn't listen too much to your cousin, she lies frequently." I countered, "No, she is not lying about this, and I know that since she isn't my only source of information." He asked, "Oh." Then I clarified, "I also consider what you tell me directly and what my uncle says." He defended himself by saying, "I had to tell the truth, I only spoke the truth." I confronted him, stating, "You either lied now, or you lied to both me, my uncle, and my cousin because what you told all of us before is not what you just said." He fell silent. I continued, "I am frightened now, Grandpa," and I felt tears welling in my eyes, making my voice break. "I am afraid that if I need you to support me, you won't do it due to the inconvenience it may cause you." His tone softened as he responded, "Oh no, you don't need to fear that, kiddo," I interjected. "But how can you say that? You just let down the younger one, so how can I trust that you won't treat me similarly?" I was now visibly wiping away tears. He fell silent again and said, "I can't hear any more of this, it's too much for me right now." I replied, "If you can't handle it, then you cannot keep acting this way. If you can't acknowledge how you have hurt us, then you cannot continue causing us pain. You must stop." I allowed the conversation to wind down there. I am working on self-improvement and striving to rise above my family's negative patterns. It's crucial for me to recognize when enough is enough. However, I am also trying not to neglect my feelings in the face of someone else's actions, even if I understand their motivations. I felt compelled to express that final thought. The emotional pain stems not only from the situation involving my cousin, but also because if he can betray her, he is capable of doing the same to me. Additionally, I have my own challenges in my relationship with my grandfather. I love him. He was my first and closest friend, even if such sentiments seem juvenile at my age of 28. For complete honesty, my family has always operated under the concept of a golden child. Each adult has their golden child, and occasionally there are multiple favorites. My grandmother's favorites were my younger brothers, while my grandfather's favorites included me, my cousin, and her younger brother. In recent years, my grandfather has attempted to rectify his behavior, as I have explained how damaging it has been, by providing my younger cousins with more material possessions. In our family, being a golden child is mostly tied to having more things, as we all are portrayed as flawed individuals requiring refinement to avoid becoming even worse people. This is said with sarcasm, reflecting my belief that we indeed are flawed, but I do not hold the aforementioned opinion about actually being worse individuals. It is unfathomable to me how his favored child could be treated poorly in this manner. Even when she misbehaved in kindergarten, she received praise, and whenever she struck me, the family laughed it off. I find it ridiculous how he could do this to his most cherished grandchild. How can I have trust in him for my own well-being? In my country, if this situation adversely affects the case for her, the authorities may label her as not trustworthy, which has serious implications. Although she is now 20 years old, the consequences of this judgment could follow her for life. If she faces assault in the future, this label could jeopardize her chances of receiving justice. This is an extremely serious issue. I have reached two possible conclusions regarding my grandfather's actions toward her, and I believe both are undeniably selfish. He raised this individual. He has first-hand knowledge of what he has done. 1. Fear. When I was around 8 or 9, we had to flee to another city because my father threatened our lives, endangering my mother, my brothers, my grandparents, and himself. My family managed to suppress the incident, keeping police and authorities at bay. However, fear is an overwhelming emotion. I find it selfish because I have faced the same choices in terrifying situations and have chosen to protect the child every single time. 2. Indifference to drama. If he is indeed overwhelmed by the tension, this is painfully self-centered behavior. Should this be the case, I don't even know if I can ever look at him the same way again. I am truly in need of guidance. I am unsure about what actions to take or what to think. One thought, albeit very painful, is that I may not be able to heal if I also want my grandfather in my life, which is distressing because I fear he has limited time left. I had been looking forward to him attending my upcoming wedding, but now I am filled with uncertainty.